I'm Marcia Lehman, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today I'm at Concord United Methodist Church Community Garden, and near the entrance to one of the gardens we have a Crape Myrtle on each side of the driveway. They're two different varieties, but both have the multi-stem kind of tree-like structure. This one is not shrubby, but it's not quite as big as the other one. So with the tree-like Crape Myrtles, they are quite common to putting out sprouts at the base, but this one doesn't have any, so that step we can skip. I do, however, have one little low-hanging branch there, and with these, generally, we would take off anything below the first major fork. So like in this one, that I would count that as a major fork. This needs to come out because it's crossing back through the center and is not yet rubbing on this, but will soon. So we'll take that out, and then I'll take this out because it's growing back into the center. And as you come along, you can, if you just brush across these, some of these break, so you know they're dead, and others don't, so they're not dead. So let me grab my pruning saw, my folding saw, and I'm going to take this off first. Now I could probably take the chance and cut this down here, but I'm not going to take the chance. I'm going to make a 3-cut removal. And the way we do that is we come out a distance from here and come up, and we're going to cut about 1/3 of the way through. What's magical about 1/3 of the way through? Well, at about 1/3 of the way through is when the weight of the branch starts to pull it down and it will pinch your saw. So 1/3 is the rule of thumb, but the real test is when do you detect that your saw is starting to be pinched. So I can get to there, and then now it's starting to pinch. So that's my first cut. My second cut is going to be above that, and the reason we're doing this is that if I had just started cutting, say here, we have probably all had a situation that as we got close to cutting through, again, the weight of the branch comes down and it rips the bark. Well, by having made this undercut, guess where it stops? So it doesn't matter that it ripped that because I had a stopgap measure here. So that first undercut is where the rip stopped. Beautiful. I mean, this is textbook. So now the third cut is to come in and clean up this stub. And what you can't see is that on the back there was a prior pruning cut, so I need to come up a little higher than I normally would. Because there is branch bark collar tissue here. So, but here's where it ripped and stopped. That was my undercut. That was cut number 1, cut number 2, cut number 3. And as I say, that looks like more of a stub than I would normally like to leave. But we already have a pruning scar on the back, and I don't want to cut into that. So that's one of those judgment calls you have to make. Okay, so we'll walk around here a little bit. Grab a few more that look like they might be dead, and they just break off. I'm going to walk back here behind the camera and look at it the way you're looking at it. And I really This one, I really think needs to go. So I'm going to make another 3-cut on this one, except I need to do it from the front, and you don't really want to watch me. You don't want to watch my backside while I make. Okay, so I made that another 3-cut here and cut it back to the branch collar, not into the trunk. And I also managed with a little bit of effort to get a much cleaner cut on this one. So this has 3 stems. This one has 2 branches, or makes a V. This one makes a V here. And I think this one wants it. This is really the nice part, where it comes up more than 5 feet before it starts to branch out. But I think for this year, we'll stop and we'll see what it does during the year. And next winter, we may come in and decide to take one of these off. But remember, pruning stimulates growth. So when this tree comes out of dormancy, it's going to want to put on some new growth, and it will be interesting to see where it does that. It's not going to do it down here anymore. Those are all gone. But it will, and so if it fills out with a beautiful canopy, this may be all we need to do. Generally, we don't need to do anything at the top. And whatever you do, please do not commit crape murder, which is where you come in and you lop it off so that all you see are short stubs of these branches. That triggers a lot of growth. And what happens is at the end of each of those stubs, some of which can be 3 or 4 inches in diameter, you'll get this cluster of new shoots. Easily 6 to 8, sometimes 10, even more. And so you have this big fat stub with these spindly little shoots. Now, if you've purchased a property where that was done and you have to deal with that, what you want to do is every winter when you dormant prune, especially the first winter, take and reduce at each of those stub cuts where you've got multiple shoots coming out, reduce it to the 2 biggest and strongest ones. What happens if you leave all 8 or 10 of those there, they're all competing for energy. And so they'll all remain rather spindly and rather weak, which means they're subject to breaking in the future. They will put out flowers, but the load of the flower may be enough to bend it down and break it. So reduce those sprouts at the end of each of those stubs, and that can be a real pain because there can be a lot of them depending on how badly it was murdered. But if you can reduce that down to 2 of the strongest stems, then they will put on the most girth, and over time you will start to get a more natural look to your Crape Myrtle. It will take a few years of doing that, but in several years, probably only you will notice that the tree had ever been murdered. A lot of people think that once it's been murdered, you just need to keep topping it. And that is probably one of the worst things you can do. It's a credit to the Crape Myrtle trees that they can sustain that and it doesn't kill them, but it definitely stresses them. And as I said, pruning stimulates growth. So every time you top it like that, when it comes out of dormancy, it puts out a whole new flush of those spindly little shoots. So just because neighbors do it doesn't mean you should do it. Don't commit crape murder. Take care of your Crape Myrtle, and it will produce lovely flowers and give you a fabulous form for a very long time. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you learned something about how to properly prune your Crape Myrtle.